Welcome back to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. My guest, as I said, she was already on the line, and she's been patiently waiting as I'm about to introduce her. And she is Michelle Davis-Newell. And she was born Michelle Davis in Chicago, Illinois in 1970 and was raised on the south side of the city. As a child, she was shy and withdrawn, a direct result of being bullied and teased by school classmates. This forced her into isolation, but it fed her creative side, and her love for reading prompted her to experiment in writing. At the age of 10, she wrote by hand a 30-page novel, which was promptly folded and stuffed in an envelope and mailed to Harlequin Romance, along with a letter explaining how she wanted to be an author so that she could take her mother out of poverty. She was thrilled when they wrote her back. Although it was a rejection letter, she was ecstatic that they had responded. In school, Michelle excelled academically. In high school, she earned a spot in the Principal Scholars Program and was subsequently inducted into the National Honor Society in her junior year. She was a candidate on Know Your Heritage, where her team placed third. She successfully competed in academic Olympics, spelling bees, and a high school mock trial. She continued to write, and often writing short stories that were passed around by students who fell in love with them, always asking for more. Despite all these personal accomplishments, Michelle's life at home took a dangerous turn when she turned 17, and she found herself repeating some of the same dysfunctional cycles she'd witnessed growing up. By the time she was 21, she had given birth to 3 children and was on welfare. Although society labeled young mothers like her, quote, welfare queens, unquote, there was something within her that would not allow her to fall victim to her circumstances. She pushed herself to do better, always challenging any complacency that held her in place until she pulled herself from the welfare roles and gained economic self-sufficiency. Never shelving her passion for writing, Michelle independently published the first novel entitled Ain't Understandin' Mellow in 2006 and was a contributing author to The Shattered Glass Effect, an anthology she initiated in 2007 that dealt with HIV and AIDS. Prior to this, she wrote several poems and was featured in various online mediums, including the Rock Online magazine, and her newest book, Ruby Slippers, which we'll be talking about this morning, has been released in 2013, which is this year. Michelle, welcome to the Reading Circle.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. You're still in Chicago now, correct?
I'm actually in South Village, but yes, it's a suburb of Chicago.
Okay, so you're in Illinois. My point is it's 6:15 here, so it's about 5:15 where you are.
Correct.
So it is early in the morning.
Yes. Very early. Very early.
Yes, it is an early morning show. It's one of those, I say, the early bird catches the worm. That's what my show is. One of those that really, and believe it or not, there are a lot of people up at this time of morning. I'm always amazed as I drive into the studio of just how many people are up. And then since the show is broadcast around the world, I mean, somebody over in Europe, it's about 12:15 there in the afternoon. So, depending on where you are in the world, if you're listening to it, it could be a really good time for you or a really crazy time for you. But in any event, I am thrilled that you took the time to rise early to be with us. And I just read your bio, and I always tell folks I like to read the entire bio for the listening audience, because you never know when listening to a story like that might encourage them. And you never know when somebody might say, well, you know what? If Michelle can do it, I can do it too. So that's why I always get into the whole bio, especially when I read one of that nature. And, of course, those are the things that we're going to talk about as we get into the interview. So, all right, I'm looking here at your bio. You said you were bullied whenever you were in school. What was going on there? Michelle? Hello? Did we lose connection? Hello? Right here at the question we lost. All right, she will call back in because I don't know what happened there. But she will call back in, and then we will get going as soon as I see the phone light back up. So I don't know. Maybe she rolled over on it. There she goes. Here it comes. All right, what'd you do? Roll over on the phone?
No, I didn't. I didn't hear anything.
That's because I asked my first question and the phone went dead.
Right. I guess it was those worms.
That's right. So that's right. So my first question dealt with this whole notion of, I see in your bio you were saying you were bullied in school. What was going on there?
Well, it was one of those things where, I guess kids judge you by the way that you look. And at that time, I guess where I came from, we were all poor. But, my mother and I struggled, and we were extremely poor. My mother was a very young mother, and she didn't have a job at the time, and we really struggled. So I guess the way I looked contributed to that, and then I was very shy as an individual. And so, I kept to myself, and I don't know, I guess I became a target, and I was bullied a lot. Sometimes kids, they teased me, and I didn't know how to defend myself, so I would cry. And I guess that kind of fueled the bullying. But it was pretty devastating at the time.
And this is going back into the 70s, I guess, and I would think early 80s or so, as a child. And it's funny, and the reason I'm asking the question is because bullying is a big topic today in 2013. It is a major topic, and I know here in New Jersey, a couple years ago or a year or so ago, a bill was passed. And so for those of us who work in education, there's a whole process now if a child is identified as a bully. There's a whole process that we have to go through. And my point is, it is a major league focus and attention on bullying now, whereas whenever, you're about 10 years or 8 years younger than I am. When we were kids, there was always the classroom bully or what have you, and if you were the victim, nobody really said anything, or vice versa. But
right.
it is a major issue now, so that caught my eye when I saw it. So you're saying that almost forced you to a degree to get even more shy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It kind of pushes you into a corner.
Right.
And it makes you, if you're already withdrawn, oh, my God, you just want to shrink away from the world.
Absolutely. And see, the fear in 2013 with that is you have a lot of kids like that age that are actually, because of the bullying, sadly committing suicide.
I attempted it, to be honest, when I was a little girl, because it was devastating. To feel like no one likes you, to feel like the world is against you. And I actually attempted it a couple of times. And it was, and see, back then, unfortunately, what that attempt, the first time, really, I passed the note around, saying that this is what I was going to do because I was so hurt. And what that did was it brought more attention on me that was even more negative. The teachers didn't know how to respond. And so after that, I felt like they looked at me even, like the other kids did. They looked at me like I was weird.
Right.
And And so at that point, it was like, okay, you know what? I just want to end this. And so I actually attempted to commit suicide. I took a lot of pills that my mom had. Yeah. And it didn't, fortunately, it didn't work. I'm still here.
Absolutely.
But that is such a painful thing. And so I feel for any child that may be bullied right now, but what I would love to say to that person, and even adults, because adults get bullied as well.
That's right.
And what I would love to say to people like that is, keep your head up, because there's something special about you that causes that attention to be on you. And you may not see it at that moment, but trust me, that person who's bullying you, they see it. And that specialness about you is bringing out the worst in them, and it's causing them to react in a way that is not very productive. But in the end, you'll prevail. If you just keep your head up, you'll prevail.
Absolutely. And that point is so well taken. And as I said, in 2013, I don't know. It's just everything is taken to a different level. So bullying that was bullying in our time is even at a different level of now. As a matter of fact, you have cyberbullying, because not only do people bully you in person, people will now bully you on Facebook or online or what have you. And exactly what you said, folks become withdrawn. They shut down. They don't tell anyone, which is leading me to the fact that I see in your bio that you said because of that, you started writing. Now, prior to the whole thing with the bullying and everything, did you like to read prior to that, or did the fact that you were being bullied kind of cause you like, you know what, this is something I can do on my own, or did you already like to read anyway?
I loved reading. It was a way for me to escape. And so I guess, being bullied, and then there were a few other things going on that actually caused me to want to escape the world, and so reading gave me that way to do that.
And see, the reason I'm going into that, because, of course, the show is the Reading Circle, and the purpose of this show is to encourage people to read more. Whatever genre of book they like to read, whether it be erotica, whether it be religious, whether it be romance novels, whether it be science fiction, whether it be autobiographies or whatever, the point of the matter is we need to read more. And you said something key a couple of minutes ago. Reading is a wonderful way to escape or to go to places you may never go to in reality. So, for example, I could be sitting here in New Jersey reading a book about France, and at that point I'm in France.
Exactly.
So now, as you would read, what type of books were you reading at that point then? Because I noticed that you sent your work off to Harlequin. So what were you reading romance novels?
Yeah, I read what was available. My mother was a huge fan of the Harlequin romance and mystery series, and so I started out reading romance novels, but once I got into her mystery novels, that just blew my mind, And so I opened the book to the back, and it had the address and of where you could write them. And so I wrote them a letter. I was like, listen, I love doing this, and I wrote this little story, and I want you to publish it for me. And I sent it off. Yeah, 10 years old. I sure did.
I'm sure the recipients were amused, as well as, at the same time encouraged that, okay, here we have somebody that's 10 and they've already kind of realized the process. Because, I mean, that would, for me, say, okay, this is somebody we're going to watch. I'm going to keep, because you were Michelle Davis at the time, I'm going to keep that name on file somewhere. Because if she's got enough courage to send us something at 10, then by the time she's 15, 20, 25, she's going to be somebody that we're probably going to have somebody as an author. But so they did respond to you, because I see here again in the bio, you're like, you know what, even though it was a rejection, it didn't matter because I was just thrilled that it was a response.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Well, what was that like for you as a 10-year-old to be getting a letter back from a publishing company like that?
That was huge to me, because it said to me, oh, my God, I don't know if they read it or not, because it was written by hand.
Right.
And who knows what my penmanship was like back then. But it was just exciting to know, and they wished me luck in my future endeavors. And even if it was just a templated letter, the fact that I got a response back was so encouraging to me, and that told me, yeah, this is something I'm going to do. So I was just elated.
All right. Well, for those of you in the listening audience, if by chance you've just joined us, my guest this morning is Michelle Davis-Newell. And we're going to take a very short break. Oddly enough, we'll be talking on the PSA, the public service announcement, about bullying. And that's what we're talking about to a degree, because I'm working our way up as to how Michelle began writing. And as you can see, the reading, the writing, and then being introspective and shy were all kind of connected. And in more times than not, over the 12 years we've been on the show, many people have shared how it was the writing that gave them a way to release, that no matter what was going on, they could go somewhere and write. And that was almost like their way, because I noticed your title is Fairy Tales My Mother Told Me, Real Life Truths I Never Told Her. And see, a lot of times for many people, even though they couldn't tell somebody physically or verbally, they could get somewhere in a journal, they could get somewhere in some other type of writing material, and they can just sit there quietly and put it all down on paper. So we're going to talk a little bit about that when we come back from the break. Don't you dare move unless you're letting somebody know that we are on the air. Again, that is gobrave.org.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. The only thing I didn't learn in school today is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
You might know me, I'm 50 Cent. You may follow my tweets, my Facebook friends. Odds are fewer than 6 degrees separate us. We're that close. What's crazy is 1 in 6 don't know where their next meal is coming from. These are your co-workers, your neighbors, your friends. Hunger's too close for us to ignore. So visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank to see how you can make a difference. From one close friend to another, let's do this. I'm 50 Cent, and together we are Feeding America.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed you are. You are listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley right here on WP 88.7 FM and www.gobrave. That's GOBRAVE.org. And my guest this morning is Michelle Davis-Newell. And we're talking about her book, or actually she's written a couple of books, but her latest is Ruby Slippers. But the genesis for her writing was her being shy and being bullied, as we just heard from the PSA. In terms of usually the victim, they don't know what to do because all they know is somebody continuously is teasing them, bothering them, hitting them, or whatever. And the PSA that you just heard about talk about, well, whenever other kids are seeing it, what they ought to be able to do. So it goes both ways. A lot of times the bully is being bullied and they keep silent. And in Michelle's case, one of her ways of releasing was to write. Did you keep journals as a kid?
Actually, I didn't. I really didn't. I just basically bottled everything inside. So if you can keep a mental journal, that's
right.
What I did.
So, okay, then if that's the case, so then you weren't actually like writing down what you were feeling as you were going along?
No, I didn't. I just wrote stories because for me it was about escape. It wasn't really about talking about it. It was just really trying to get away from it. And so I, like I said, I kept a mental journal. And then when that became too painful to even deal with, I just started developing stories inside of my own mind.
But that was my next question. Where did the stories come from? It was just, did you have a vivid imagination? Were you writing what you saw around you? Were you writing about experiences you had, or all of the above?
It was about escape. So thank God I had a vivid imagination because it gave me that way to just get away and go into my own world. So I didn't have to deal with reality at that time.
Do you have siblings?
I have one brother. He's about 7 years younger than me.
Okay, so then while you were off somewhere, right, it's not like he was like wondering what you were doing or anything like that? Or did you find it, because a lot of times those of us who like reading and writing as kids, you know, and you just talked about being picked on, but we're seen as nerds, or we're seen as the little geeks, or we're seen as the bookworms, or the teacher's pets, or the, you know, whatever they call kids that, you know, do well in school.
Correct.
So was it one of those cases where the rest of your little girlfriends were out jumping double dutch and whatever girls do, and you were like in the house reading and writing?
Well, to a certain extent. So when I was younger, and when I was at home around other kids who were about the same age as me and who went through some of the similar things I was going through, you know, I was very active with them. So I was always outside playing the double dutch games and having a great time. It really wasn't until I was at school for some reason where a lot of the bullying occurred. And actually, even at home, like on the next block from us, there was this group of girls. And for some ungodly reason, I don't know why, these girls really disliked me, and they would chase me if I saw them at the store. They chased me, and, you know, they bullied me a lot. And so if I stayed on my block, I was okay. In front of the building where I lived, I was fine, and I could hang out and have fun. I didn't get really to the point where people would see me always writing until about the 7th or 8th grade up and through high school. That's when every time people saw me, I was writing, whether I was sitting on the lake or sitting in front of the building. I was always with a pen in my hand.
Now, was the writing or any of these assignments did you turn in as writing projects or in creative writing?
Yes, a couple of times in high school. But for the most part, I would write these little stories, and, you know, one of my classmates would see me writing and say, "What are you writing?" And I would share that with them, and then they would pass the stories around, you know. And so it was really more so at that time for entertainment for some of the classmates because they really got a thrill out of reading some of the stuff that I had written. One time I did write the school play in high school, and we performed it, so that was pretty exciting.
Because I'm seeing here National Honor Society, the Principal Scholars Program. Did the writing and reading, as a principal of a school, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. Did that influence your academic success?
I believe the writing and the reading did, absolutely, because the more you read and the more you write, the more you learn. And so that's something I do believe that led to me academically flourishing in school.
Now, I see here your first novel was Ain't Understanding Mellow.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there, and how'd you come up with that title? Because as a musician who comes up with titles for songs, a lot of times, I really have fun with that. So when I see that title, I'm like, okay, that's an interesting title. That's a little bit different. Ain't Understanding Mellow. Talk a little bit about...
I started writing a fiction book, and I didn't have the title for it yet. And it was similar to some of the things that I had experienced in my own personal life about a single mother who had gone through some trials in her life. And then it's like she finally got what was going on. And when she did some introspection, she finally got what was going on in her life and what she needed to do to get things right. And so it's like the light bulb came on, and she understood. And once she understood, she felt peaceful. She felt mellow. And so I was at work one day listening to the radio, and my favorite song, Jerry Butler, Ain't Understanding Mellow, came on. And I was like, that's it. Now, of course, the title, the song itself has nothing to do with the title of the book.
Right.
But the title fit because it's like once you really, really get a keen understanding of something, it really, really places you at ease. And I just thought it fit.
Absolutely, and it's funny because that's exactly how titles come. Titles can come out of the blue. You think something is just totally unrelated, but it works for whatever you're doing. And I know, again,
Yes.
putting titles on songs, it's interesting because people will look at me and say, how did you come up with that? Where did that come out? And they always have stories behind it. And that's why when I saw that, it struck me. Again, Ain't Understanding Mellow. All right. So now I'm going to take another short, like a 25-second break. But when I come back, I want to talk about you going from the 10-year-old girl that sent the letter to Harlequin to now actually saying, you know what, I am going to get a book published. I want to talk a little bit about that when we come back. For those of you in the listening audience, go tweet somebody. Just put on there, you know what, just go put on your timeline, www.gobrave.org. Listen now. Just put that on there and tell them to turn on their speakers and open up a tab so that they can catch this interview. You can put it on Facebook as well. It works on all of them because I do it all the time. I go to Hootsuite and I do a blast out to everything that I'm on. So let somebody know we're on the air. Let's see if we can make as many hits as we can to gobrave.org. And we will be right back. I'm talking to Michelle Davis-Newell.
WPSC is supported by JF Camps. JF Camps will be holding a lineman camp at William Patterson this summer featuring New York Giants lineman Chris Snee. The camp will be held June 24th through the 27th for boys graduating 6th grade through graduating 11th grade. For more information, contact Jerry Flora at 914-552-1877 or visit www.jfcamps.com.
Listen to Brave New Radio on your smartphone with TuneIn Radio.
All right. I told you we were going to take a very short break. And right before the break, I was talking to Michelle about going from being the little 10-year-old that wrote a letter to Harlequin to now her first novel, which was Ain't Understanding Mellow, and that was back in 2006. What process, or what did you self-publish, or did you now go back to a publishing house?
I self-published.
And what was that process like? Because, okay, for people in the listening audience, to put it in perspective for you, my guess is you're talking, let's see, you said 10 years old. I'm looking at your bio. You said 1970. So that means in 1980, you were 10. Yeah. In 2013, technology is, or even by that time, 2006, you didn't have to write a letter to Harlequin anymore. The technology had advanced enough between 1980 and 2005, 2006 that you could do it yourself. So how did you come to that decision? Had you tried again the traditional route, or did you just say, you know what, I remember what happened to me when I was 10, I'm just going to go ahead and do this thing myself? How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, actually, being a part of different writing groups, I learned a lot from some of the other authors who were seeking to get published. And, of course, I queried agents, and most publishing companies said that you needed to have an agent before they would even consider you. So they didn't
That's right.
accept, so they didn't accept unsolicited manuscripts. And so I was listening or reading about a lot of authors who had sent. One thing that got me particularly interested is when an author said, you may submit 300 queries before you get a yes. And at the same time, I had learned about how you can self-publish. And so I'm a very independent person, and I thought, this is something that's important to me. I'm not writing because I want to get rich or I want to make money. I have a message that I want to get out.
Right.
And so I just refuse. I refuse to sit back and let somebody tell me 300 times no before somebody possibly says yes. And so I sent out maybe 10 queries, and I got back 2 rejections. And I thought, you know what? No. If there's a way for me to do it myself, I'll do that. And that's what I did.
And see, again, the technological aspects of it, or the technology had changed enough. And again, for those of us who are independent artists, the same thing that happened with the written or the literary world also happened with the music world, that we were able to now self-publish our own CDs, so forth and so on. I love the technology. I've gotten into it so much. As a matter of fact, right now I'm recording the show. Normally I rely on the studio or the station to do it for me, but because the equipment has been rocky lately, if you will, or either not turned on, I know how to do it myself. So I bring my own computer, hook up, laptop, so on and so on. I'm just saying all that to say the technology has moved so quickly that if you have any kind of savvy whatsoever, you can do things on your own. Now, the only issue with that is you got to make sure everything is in place. That also includes your own editing, your own so forth and so on. How did that whole thing work out in terms of like having someone proofread the material, editing, so forth and so on?
It's a process. And so the first time I did it, it was really learning as I went. But this time, it was so exciting. And, I joke with my husband, I feel like a publishing CEO, because I went through a 6 to 9 month process.
That's right.
I wanted to make sure that everything was done right, and I got an editor. As a matter of fact, I purposefully went through 3 rounds of editing. I hired a book designer. I even had test readers to read for me, and so I took myself through the entire process because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just putting something together and then throwing it out there and say, hey, world, read this. It was something that I took seriously, and I had a wonderful, wonderful time doing it. It really can be fun.
It really, for those of us who are on the creative side, you're absolutely right. And I'm quite sure you've had this experience, because I know as a musician having my own now CDs out, I've gone back and listened to the finished work and say, wow, I don't even remember doing that. Is that actually me?
Yes.
Have you read through your work and said, I don't even remember writing that? Well, I can't believe that's my writing. That's me. I mean, I'm looking at Ruby Slippers. I'm looking at the cover and so forth and so on. Do you ever just pick that up and say, wow, that was through me?
Yes, absolutely, because you can't believe you did it.
Absolutely right. I mean, but it is, for those, if you haven't had that experience, it is a very strange experience. It's hard to put into words, to go back and see something that you've created and then either listen to it again or read it again or whatever. And seriously, you, in some instances, don't even remember it. It's like, that was me. So I know you've had that as well. So now you have Ain't Understanding Mellow out. You had it, and then you did the anthology. What kind of caused you to initiate that anthology?
I went to... I think I went to some kind of forum, and they were talking about self-publishing. I'm sorry, not self-publishing. They were talking about putting together a book with a group of people, and how sometimes, writing anthologies can help you as an author to get yourself out there if you're self-publishing. And so I'd spoken with another fellow author of mine, and I said, it would be great if we put together an anthology. And we got together with a couple of other authors, and we came up with a concept. And someone said, well, the big topic right now is HIV/AIDS, and so maybe we can do a group of stories that talks about what leads to people contracting this disease. And so the first group of people, it kind of fell through the cracks for a while. But there was another person who was really, really interested in seeing these stories go forth. And so she kind of took the lead, because I kind of fell back from it, and the other lead person fell back, and this other individual took the lead. And then she brought me back into it, and it was really, really great. Everyone had to work on their stories and, get them submitted, and then they would be sent back with tweaks, and it was really a great activity to do, and it really touched on a deep issue, especially during that time, because women were, especially African-American women, were really, really being hit with HIV, and it seemed like it came with a flash. And to tell those stories and to put that book together, that was something that was really, really great.
Absolutely. And we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the messages that you're trying to get across. Say, for example, that one is kind of sort of obvious, and maybe it's not. But certainly as we move into Ruby Slippers, it says, fairy tales my mother told me, real life truths I never told her. So when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about the anthology, about the whole impact you all were looking to have with HIV and AIDS. And then we're going to zoom right on into Ruby Slippers in terms of what is it that you want your reading audience to get out of the fairy tales your mother told you and the truths you never told her. So if you just joined us, this is the Reading Circle with Marc Medley right here on WP 88.7 FM and GoBrave.org. My guest this morning is Michelle Davis-Newell. Newell is your married name, correct?
Yes, it is.
I'm asking because I work with a Newell, and we work together. Her name is Dr. Lori Newell. And so, matter of fact, whenever we were putting the guest list together for the show, and I saw the last name, I said, I wonder are they related to Lori? But yeah, she's here in New Jersey, but I think she came through New Jersey by way of Jamaica. So I don't know if Newell is a Jamaican surname or what have you, but it is the same spelling and everything, Newell. And she's here in New Jersey. So I don't know if your husband has any relatives in New Jersey or not, but they are here. And I'm assuming that's her married name too. So in any event, this is the Reading Circle. We're going to take a short break, and we will be right back.
DJ Mike Medium is in the mix.
What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Michael Medium here of 88.7 FM Brave New Radio, a.k.a. Half DJ, Half Amazing, a.k.a. the DJ your girlfriend's been thinking about, a.k.a. Corey Matthews. I'll be your DJ bringing the party to you for 2 hours commercial-free each and every Thursday night. I'll spin the hottest in hip-hop, R&B, dubstep, reggae, top 40, dancehall. Basically, you name it, I'll spin it. Listen to the Michael Medium Show 10 to midnight each and every Thursday night. It's going to be live. Only on 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
That indeed you are. You're listening to The Reading Circle. And I tell you what, before I go back to our interview, did you know that car crashes are the #1 cause of teen deaths? And that half of all teens that die in a car crash. So when you are with a friend and they are driving recklessly, say something, anything. This has been a public service message from the Ad Council, speakuporelse.com, and your friends right here at WP 88.7 FM. My guest this morning is Michelle Davis-Newell, and we're talking about her works. And right before the break, we talked about the message that Michelle is trying to get out to her audience. So talk to me a little bit about, like I said, I think the HIV and the AIDS is obvious, but maybe it's not. When the various stories that was in the Shattered Glass Effect, what did they kind of get into?
Well, those stories really got into how people come into contact with HIV and AIDS. And so everyone came from a different angle in describing the various ways that people can be affected by this disease, whether it's through casual sex or, it could be intravenous drug use, or it could be through no fault of your own. Maybe you go to the doctor and you're going in for a regular visit and you get pricked by a needle as they give you some type of injection or remove blood if the needle is tainted. And so it just really talked about the various ways that this disease can be contracted.
Is there ways of prevention, or is there a message to say, like you were talking about the casual sex, saying, you know what, that's not probably the best idea in the world, or do you kind of caution people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. You have to be careful with that. Yes.
So that message would be there. So now we move into Ruby Slippers, because you've gone through Ain't Understanding Mellow. You've done The Shattered Glass. You've done poems and everything. And you talked a little bit about how this time around the process was a lot more fun. Is that because you felt like you've learned so much from the other things? Or was it just, you know what, I know what I'm doing now?
Absolutely. Yes.
So let's talk about that. How did that project come about? What made you come down with that? What is the fairy tales all about? Talk a little bit about that. We'll do that for the next 10 minutes or so before, I'll let you take the mic and do all the promotions you need to promote. Talk a little bit about the Ruby Slippers. What's going on there?
Well, so the writings that I didn't do as a little girl in terms of journaling what I was feeling, I did that as an adult. And what brought that process on was, as an adult, I still found myself in a lot of cycles, a lot of dysfunctional cycles. I was in a bad relationship. It was like bad relationship after bad relationship. I was dealing with a lot of self-esteem issues, and I was actually going through some depression that was not clinically diagnosed. I just know that I was tired all the time. I was just feeling down, and I felt like I was not moving in my life. And, finding myself in those types of situations, I had to look within and say, okay, Michelle, what's going on with you? And so what I did was I started writing. It's like the thoughts just came, and I just started writing, and I was writing all over the place. I mean, I had pages, on notebook paper. I had little scraps of paper that I would find, and I just started writing. And then eventually I would go back and read some of the things I wrote, and I started putting things together. The one thing that stuck out, no matter how much no matter what I was writing about at the time, I thought about the stories that my mom used to tell me, the fairy tales. When I was a little girl, she would always tell me about, Little Red Riding Hood and Sleeping Beauty and the Troll Under the Bridge. She just would always tell me those stories. And sometimes I would beg her over and over again, tell me this one again, tell me that one again. And it dawned on me, she told me a lot of fairy tales, but there are a lot of things that was going on in my life. And I realized the reason that I loved the fairy tales was because it was that escape, that it provided me a way to get into a whole nother world. And I love to hear they lived happily ever after, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to live happily ever after. And so it dawned on me one day, wait a minute, life is not a fairy tale. And that's where the title came from, Ruby Slippers. It's like, she told me all these great stories, but in the end, we still have to come back and face reality. And that's what I had to learn to do. And so, voila, Ruby Slippers, fairy tales my mother told me, the real life truths I never told her, because all the things that happened to me, I never explained that to my mother. I never really talked to her about that. There were things that I was going through as a kid that she didn't know about. I was molested as a child. I never, ever told, even as an adult, I never told my mother that I had been molested. I never told her that, these kids were bullying me. Even though she saw the effects of it when I tried to commit suicide, I still never got into details about what happened. And then even some of the things that I witnessed while growing up with her, some of the cycles that she went through, I never told her how those things impacted me. And so writing this book was really, it was therapeutic for me. It was a way to get those emotions out. And then I wanted to make sure that I reached out to other young girls, other women, to say, hey, no matter what you're going through in your life, you can overcome some of the most devastating obstacles if you just keep going. Don't give up. Just because things are bad right now, it doesn't mean that they have to stay that way, but you have to take control. You have to take the reins, and you have to direct the way that you want your life to go in, because that's what I had to learn to do.
So where did the actual title of Ruby Slippers come? What's the significance of the Ruby Slippers?
It's really a way of giving homage to those fairy tales. And, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
That's what I thought.
3 times. Yeah.
That's right.
She clicked her heels 3 times, and she said, there's no place like home. And so for me, it was closing my eyes, clicking my heels, and saying, there's no place like home. And for me, home was in my heart. Home was that place that gave me peace, that gave me refuge. And so that's where I wanted to go. Anytime I fell into some kind of distress, I wanted to go to that place of refuge and peace.
It is. I was sitting there listening as you were talking, and again, it saddens me. I'm even to the point where I'm no longer shocked The number of female guests that I've had on this show that has talked about being molested is astounding.
Yes.
I mean, it is. I mean, that must be like, and I don't want to just say U.S. or America, but I don't know.